Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Developmental Disabilities Administration Waiver Advisory Council. My name is Rhonda Workman. I am the DDA Director of Federal Programs, one of your co-chairs. Charlotte, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Charlotte Drigno-Whitaker. I'm also co-chair, and I'm really looking forward to today's meeting.
Thank you, Charlotte. I'm going to turn it over now to Dr. Smalls, who's going to share some housekeeping information with us.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. All attendees are in listen-only mode, and your mic and your camera are currently turned off. During the presentation, if you have any questions, please type them in the question box here. And later in the meeting, the team will respond to questions submitted by this community. There will also be time for you to ask your questions directly. Before we begin our meeting, we also want to ensure civility for all of our meetings. This free expression of diverse viewpoints is essential. It's an essential value for our group. This freedom comes with the responsibility to engage respectfully, which involves treating one another with dignity and respect in good faith. Uncivil behavior, disruptive conduct, abusive language, threats, or harassment will not be tolerated and may lead to being excused from the meeting. Thank you for helping to keep this meeting productive and comfortable for everyone. And now I'd like to turn the meeting over to our Deputy Secretary, Marlena Hutchinson. Good afternoon, Marlena.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Dr. Smalls. Welcome, everyone. We have quite a bit of folks in the room today, so good to see you all in person, and welcome to all of you online. We have a pretty good agenda today, and we are strongly encouraging open discussion today, so hope that you're ready to come here and talk. Thanks, everybody, again for joining today. I'm going to turn it over to Rhonda now.
Thank you. Can you go to the next slide, please, Dr. Smalls? This is our agenda for today. We are going to first start with council member introduction so we can confirm all the council members that are present here or online. We're then going to do the approval of the December meeting minutes. We'd like to discuss a new group for people with lived experiences that Charlotte's going to lead. And then we're going to have Karen Lee and the waiver recommendation work group share information and have further discussion, and then we'll follow that with public comment. Can you go to the next slide, please? Charlotte, I'm going to turn it over to you for the ground rules.
Alrighty, so for the conduct of the ground rules for the meetings, we are going to assume positive intent, assume speak one at a time. We are to speak in plain language, share information openly. A major goal is to listen to others' point of view, to remain flexible and open-minded, actively participate, engage respectfully and politely, and to limit distractions. Yes. Go to the next slide.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. Really appreciate that. Now we're going to go through and introduce our council members. If you could, as I call your name, unmute and let us know that you're with us today, that would be great. Can you go to the next slide, please? So first we have Azib Aderi. Azib, are you with us today?
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Baker?
I am present.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Rob Baynard?
Good afternoon.
Beth Benavides?
Here.
Caitlin Bishop? Kelly Cooper?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Josh Delpos?
I'm here.
Thank you, Josh. Stephanie Eckerd? Next is Charlotte. We know Charlotte's with us. Alexander Fitzgerald. Michael Greiner. Patrick Kearney. John Paul Lullaby.
I'm here.
Thank you, John Paul. Karen Lee.
Good afternoon.
Marlo Lemon. Rachel London.
Good afternoon.
Matt Morgan.
Good afternoon.
Matthew Ramsey. Matt Rice. Emily Taylor Rowe.
Here.
Jessica Salmon. Delegate Shetty. Dr. Lisa Thomas. Teresa Titus Howard. Abraham Udofi. Maureen Van Stone. Stephanie Watkins. And Naza Wortham.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. Can you have the next slide, please, Dr. Small? We're also going to see our non-voting council members present with us today. Nan Brenningham.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Nan. Darlena Yelogum. Kelly Fox. Elisa Jones.
Hello, everyone.
Suzanne Corp. Beth Lash. Danielle Meister. Kate Murray. Patrice Miller. Stephanie O'Day.
Present.
Eric Saber. Keisha Shaw. Dr. Alger Studstill.
Present.
Joseph Welburn. And Janine Zalaki. Thank you. Can we go to the next slide, please? Charlotte, I'm turning it over to you for the next slide.
Yes. Okay, well, the next thing would be that if there's anybody that would like to edit or amend any of the minutes from our December meeting, can do so at this time if there is anything anyone would like to add or amend.
Doesn't look like anybody has anything in the room, Charlotte.
Okay, well then, if there's nothing further, then if there's anyone that would like to make a motion to approve those hours.
Just a second. Just 1 second, Charlotte. I'm sorry. Karen Lee has.
Sorry, I had to pull it up because I didn't bring a copy of it. So under the minutes, under October minute meeting approval, it says Karen Lee made a motion to accept February minutes.
Okay.
Oh, okay. And so once
I
we
think
do
it's
that,
supposed to mean
October. Yeah. We will correct that to reflect the correct month.
and then all the way down, yeah, and then it approved, yeah.
Yep. Thank you, Karen. Any other edits?
I just have a question. We have a quorum. I couldn't tell.
I don't have the list. I know Nicole was taking the toll on. Nicole, are you able to
Take it off. Oh, no.
tell us how many members we have today? We'll take a look at that.
Well,
Again,
we can't vote if it's not a quorum.
Right, so we'll table the minutes then for the next meeting.
I mean, we can't approve it.
You need a quorum for the meeting.
Rhonda, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So we have 13 voting council members present, and we have 6 non-voting council members present. We have a total of 47 voting and non-voting.
We just need the voting.
Yes, so 13 voting members, correct?
Yes, that's how many we have present out of 32.
I know.
There, just to interject, there are 27 filled voting seats. There are 6 unfilled voting seats. So 13 would represent just one under half of that.
So we have to hold.
So we will hold the approval of the minutes for the next meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. Charlotte, do you want to share some information about this slide?
Yes. So after some of the exposure that I've had to, the council and the sort of discussions that we have to have for the waiver, I realized that the side to it that the people lived experience that I am bringing is a very specific aspect to it all, and to be able to bring together a group in which we can all contribute in that way, I feel like would do well to have its own meetings and its own side, so that that side of all of this can be presented to the council as a whole, as a group, and be able to bring our input in a valuable and efficient way. And so I felt that I would like to recommend starting a group for those with lived experience.
Thank you, Charlotte. Any discussion about forming a group that would be for people with lived experiences to come together and have conversations?
Just out of curiosity, Charlotte, what are you thinking the outcome of the group would be?
I would hope that we could come up with the either issues or the experiences that we had, so that when we do come, because a lot of us in the years that we've experienced it have, either had issues or, we haven't understood quite, how the waiver works in certain ways. And, I feel that being able to speak to other people who have had very different experiences, that I myself and hopefully the others that are in it can get a better idea about how each of us might be using the waiver differently, or things that we've encountered that are different, that kind of may help understand it all as a whole, and to hopefully down the road maybe come with ideas and contribute to the council.
Would you imagine that the group would then filter their recommendations to the recommendations group, or that you would put forth your own recommendations?
I would hope that we could all kind of come together,
Okay.
and as a group come up with recommendations and to discuss what we are, experiencing. Because I know myself, I've been in with the waiver for almost a decade, and when I started coming to these council meetings, I realized it's a very different view. I'm getting a very different perspective, even though I've lived it for a while. It is a whole new angle, and I'm learning a lot and seeing things in this vantage point, and so I am learning a lot more about this side of it. But my lived experience is where my knowledge comes from. That's where my experience is, and so I would hope to be able to help facilitate or contribute to that, since at the end of the day, it is the participants and us that are, receiving these resources and experiencing, the fruits of all of this discussion.
My question is because I know I want to make sure that the recommendations committee continues to have people with all sorts of backgrounds and experiences. And so I don't want people to abandon the recommendations committee to go to your committee because I think the richness of the committee. And so I appreciate if they work side by side and that your committee brings forward ideas so that we still have membership of people with lived experience on the recommendations committee. That's my only thought.
Yes, I would hope that this is only in addition to, like, if there's
Okay,
anyone else that would add to what they're all doing, but I totally agree with that as well.
thank you.
Okay, any other thoughts?
Charlotte, it's Rachel London. I got one more question.
Yes.
Have you talked to the other people with lived experience? I'm only asking because as I was watching who was present today, whether online or not, it sounded like the majority of the people with lived experiences were not. So I just want to make sure everybody's contributing to the conversation too. That have you talked to them outside of this?
I have spoken to one other person about starting the group, and there was a brief discussion at the prep meeting last week where one of the other lived experience members expressed an interest in joining the group. But other than those couple of people, I have not had the opportunity to talk to anyone or reach out.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah.
Maybe a good first question is how can we make this easier for people to attend? Or more, I don't know if it's accessibility, timing, things like that. So it's a great idea, Charlotte.
And as Charlotte said, we did talk about this last week during the prep meeting with people with lived experiences, and there was interest in that. Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you.
Kelly Cooper, do you want to come off mute?
Yes, good afternoon. I had a question about the people with lived experiences group. I was wondering if the vision was...
Don't be freaked out. My face is really puffy and red because I had a chemical peel yesterday. Where they harden your skin.
Is somebody else talking?
It is red.
Just a reminder to all participants to please keep yourself muted since we have unmute permissions turned on for this meeting.
And then my face can be like baby spot.
That's awesome.
Hi.
Good. How you doing?
Good. There's your hat.
Liz Benavides, if you could please mute yourself.
That's his baseball team.
Kelly, go ahead.
Hi, sorry, Charlotte. My question was, if your goal for this group was to bring together all the people with lived experience to have a safe, free-flowing environment to discuss their experiences and come to a consensus of what our recommendation would be for the members of the recommendation committee to more appropriately represent all of the members of the lived experiences when they put forth their recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, my goal is to really get insight into what everyone is experiencing. I only have experience, well, I do have slight experience with the provider model, but I mostly just know the self-directed. And so I hope to learn a lot more um, as we've, gone through this. I'm learning how much I have to learn about it, and how my individual experience is just one. And so I do hope that if we can all come together and, discuss what, we hope to see, that maybe we can then bring those ideas forth cohesively and unified so that everyone can be heard and hopefully make an impact and contribute to what the council is doing.
Thank you, Charlotte. And remember, the waiver recommendation work group is one work group, right? And as per our charter, we can establish additional work groups. And so there's great opportunities for us to gain, I think, information and insight with the people with lived experiences, having that safe space to come together and have some conversations.
Can I just add also that we have had some requests as the subgroup about how we communicate with people, and when they've asked for accommodations, whether we do a before session or an after session or whatever. So anybody who'd like to be involved, we have been open to to respect their learning style.
That's great. That's fantastic. Yeah. I think it was a great idea from Charlotte, and a network group that brings this opportunity for people with lived experiences to kind of come together and help. And as you said, continue to participate on the waiver recommendation work group. Yeah. I know we may have some other council members that may have joined us after we've taken roll. So if you're a council member and joined us late, because I do know a couple people said they'd be joining us late, if you could raise your hand and let us know, we'll open to introduce yourself. So I think we want to go to the next slide.
There's a raised hand from Teresa Titus Howard.
Oh, yes, Teresa, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, good afternoon. My apologies. This is Teresa Titus Howard. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Okay. All right. I think we're going to go to Karen Lee to share information from the waiver recommendation work group. So Dr. Smalls, if you want to go to the next slide.
So a number of committee members are also in the room as well as online. So I have previewed this in our pre-session, and so asking people to fill in where I miss, and we'll move forward. So we went in a little bit different direction after the budget came out and we saw the priorities of the department and started to do our own investigation about numbers and starting to learn how to use the Hilltop data set, and went back to the drawing board to start talking about micro issues. I also had a really great conversation, Charlotte and I did with Rhonda about what the goals were of this committee and how we would present. And because we are in year 2 of the waiver, anything that goes in now would be an amendment. And so what we decided to do was to look at a very short-term goal, would be an amendment that we could do in the next 4 months or so, and then look a little bit farther down, like 9 months to a year. Those things might take more development, more discussion, and then look even farther down the road, more like 18 months, which some ideas need to take a lot more development and thinking than just reaction right now. And then looking at what would happen in the renewal, which is 3 years from now. So rather than trying to address everything right now, we thought what would be the easiest to address short term and in response to the department's priorities, and then moving forward. And so we ended up coming back to talking about the 3 waivers that currently exist. and the purpose of each waiver and how they're structured and why they were originally structured the way they are. And so we voted to take a look at the capitating and putting a cap on it. We're going to talk more about that as we go on. The community supports waiver and the family supports waiver. So we're going to do a little bit of an education piece here. I want to make sure that if you have any questions, you stop us along the way, and then we will have open dialogue with everybody. The interesting thing is that there are 13 people on the subcommittee, and the majority of the people on the subcommittee are the people who are here today. So thank you to everybody's diligence. This group has been meeting weekly to try to move things along. So next slide. Okay, so this is a little bit of a learning session about what a capitated waiver is and what it's used for. So I appreciate people's patience as we tell the story. Next slide. So right now, there's a lot of ways that states have waivers. We heard from Janine last time. Sometimes states have a single waiver and everything is under it. Sometimes states have multiple waivers. And there's a lot of different choices about how waivers can be structured. When we say autism waiver here, we aren't talking about the autism waiver for children in Maryland, but there's one in Pennsylvania that is for adults with autism. It's very different, but these are not what we're recommending. This is just kind of the stuff we threw on the table just so we could have a discussion in general about what waivers are used for and how we can use them. Go forward. So here's some, just kind of some basic facts about the waiver is that Maryland currently has 3 waivers, I think, as most people know: the family support waiver, community support waiver, and community pathways. They can be written with all sorts of safeguards and cost containment measures and focus. You could have a employment waiver, you could have a self-direction waiver, all sorts of ways that states are allowed under the rules to do that. And one of the ways that the states are allowed to make sure that they stay within their budgets is putting caps on it. And we could put caps a variety of ways. You can cap how many people have access to that waiver. You can cap how much money each person in that waiver gets. And you could also cap how many hours. And I think one of the really important things I didn't know, and I really appreciate a couple of our community committee members have used the autism waiver in Maryland. And so their idea of what a capped waiver was different because of how that waiver is administered. So we aren't talking about people getting a set of services, whether they need it or not. We're still talking about person-centered and having it driven by a plan, but also putting in the cost containment and service containment methods. So we aren't talking about the way that the autism waiver currently operates or did operate. So go on. Yeah.
And don't want to take up too much time. What do you mean by the way that the autism waiver? Because they should be operating very similar to what we do.
So I will pass that over to either Azeb or to Beth, who both brought forward that the autism waiver, at least for some time, people got a package of services, and the package was whether you needed everything in that package or not, you got this package. Okay. And as a result, some families got things they didn't need. It was kind of a one size fits all. But Beth, do you have anything you want to add to the way that you were talking about the autism waiver is structured? It's okay. Okay. So it was like
I can speak for Beth if she's
okay.
not there. Like from my experience with my son, everyone gets the same personal support hours, whether they have severely impacted kids or mildly impacted kids. They all get the same amount of personal support. They call it IISS, and also integrated support, therapeutic integrated support, the same thing, the same hours for everybody. If it's 20 hours a week, it's 20 hours a week for everyone. If it's 40 hours a week for the personal support, the IISS is 40 hours for everyone. It's an equal number of hours for everyone who is accepted in that program.
Yeah. And that was really good information for me. I didn't realize that because one of people's concerns was that if you capitate a waiver, that everybody gets a cookie cutter service and it's not driven by the person. And so we were able to clarify that that's not what we were putting forward. So thank you.
I just want to add to that. None of the 1915C waivers in Maryland, we have 8 of them, are capitated. So I'm reacting just hearing this feedback because they're all supposed to be person-centered and driven, not like a cookie cutter. So this is helpful feedback.
Okay.
Yeah, just the autism waiver, so it doesn't have any like numbers, not even kind of
The autism waiver has service limitations, right? But it's not, when you talk about a capitated waiver program, that's more of a managed LTSS, and that's not how any of the 1915C waiver programs operate. They're all person-centered and driven, supposed to be, and people are supposed to get their hours based on their needs. The only thing that might carry over as everybody's getting the same thing, you might see that with respite, but everything else is supposed to be based on what the participant needs. We don't have any capitated waivers in Maryland. Mr. Baker?
Yeah, all the trainings I've attended as a parent and a participant, as a member of this committee, related to person-centered planning, it's just that. So it would be the antithesis of the current goals if it were to be a cookie cutter approach. So God forbid that, that it would go to that. I think the person-centered planning is central to this.
Okay. So this is a way that I think about it. I always think about things according to food, and especially cookies. So I think about the batter up on top is DDA's budget, right? That's all it is. DDA's got a budget, and this is what it is. The governor puts it forward, the legislature approves it, and that's what DDA has to use. As we found out in the last month or so, that they had to make some extra batter, but that's not traditionally how it works, that they've only got what they've got. And so one of the things DDA has to decide every year is, are they going to give a lot of people, are you going to make a lot of cookies, small cookies, or are you going to make a couple of really big cookies? Or are you going to balance it and you're going to have some small cookies and some big cookies, which is what DDA has done. And the way that they've done that in the past is by controlling the number of available people, the number of new people who could enter the waiver. There was for a short time on the family supports waiver and on the family supports waiver and the community supports waiver, sorry. There was a dollar capitation, so there was the ability for DDA to have a lot of people enter services, but to get a smaller amount of money. It did not preclude the people that needed larger services or bigger services from going into the other waiver, but it changed the amount. So this is a balance that DDA has, and if we're going to advise them well, it's important for us to advise them knowing their limitations. And so DDA has a limitation on the amount of money. The money is not an entitlement, it is an approval process. And so our recommendations come knowing that there's only a certain amount of money available. I wanted to just give a really quick example. I've been doing my job for a really long time. I've been the CEO at Seek for 35 years. And when I started, nobody else in this room who's been doing it that long, but 35 years ago, we were just in year 2 of the governor's transitioning youth initiative. And what DDA did was they took the allocation for the governor's transitioning youth and they said, there are this many students and there's this much money. Every student gets $7,500 and that's all you get. Whether you were going into a day program or you were going into employment services or you were going into residential, that's what we have and that's how we're dividing it. That lasted only a couple of years, and then they started to realize some people needed more and some people needed less. And but so it's that there. If we operate from the place that DDA has X amount of dollars, and so they don't have enough for everybody to get really big things, but there is, and there's of course an equity issue that if a couple people get really big things, there might be a lot of people who don't get anything. And so our recommendation is, you can go forward. This is just another way to think about it, right? They're balancing the scale. So we want to balance the scale between capping the waivers so that we can serve more people. I think that there's 800 transitioning youth we've calculated. And we generally serve about 75% of them on an annual basis. About 75 or 80% go into service. So we want to make sure that there's enough dollars for everybody to get services that is transitioning out, as well as anybody who's in crisis and what they may need. And so recommending the balance, we're recommending that we look at capping those 2 waivers. Okay, you can go forward. Okay, so I wanted to be able to have a discussion about this. And I will tell you that why I think it's really important to have an open discussion is because I think DDA is probably already thinking about some of this or thinking about how to do this. And because there's many, many ways to cap a waiver, to have cost containment. As I said, you can only have specific services in a waiver, or you can cap by the number of people who have access to that by what they call slots, or you can do a dollar cap. There's a lot of complications around that, but I thought that it was important that there be a back and forth dialogue for us, knowing that we want to be able to make sure that there's enough money for everybody who needs to get these services. And so that's the recommendation for the capitation, but I think we're open for dialogue about what people's thoughts are.
So council members in the room and online, if you'd like to share, raise your hand and they'll recognize you. John Paul?
So I have a question. How do you get onto the recommendation committee or the other committee that Charlotte talked about?
That's a great question, John Paul. To participate in the waiver recommendation work group, you can reach out to Karen Lee or Charlotte and myself. I'll connect you with Karen Lee in the group. And for the people with experience group, you can reach out to Charlotte or I, and we will coordinate that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. John Paul, did you have any thoughts about what Karen Lee just shared about cap waivers and the opportunity to look at the number of people in the program or the services or the limits associated with that?
I think that there are, it's an important thing that many people get at least a little bit of service. So I think that it makes sense because there's only a certain amount of money in the budget. And the governor has different priorities potentially. That's why our budget's the way it is.
Thank you, John Paul. Anybody else? Opportunities for discussion is what Karen's asking.
Any other committee members want to put something forward too?
Yeah, throw this out. So we're talking about the family support waiver and the community support waiver. I mean, let me ask you up front. I'm assuming the committee has not been operating in a vacuum. So if you had any, you intimated that maybe you talked to the DDA was moving in this direction of capping. If you had any internal discussions, if so, what were the, would you like to share what was?
I have not talked directly to Rhonda or Marlena about that, but because of the work that's being done right now around collaboration and people working on the budget issues, I've been in different meetings with different people, but I have not ever had a direct conversation with DDA. These waivers used to be capped, and I've worked in many other states that have capitated waivers, and it's a little surprising that Maryland doesn't have one right now, but.
So in 2018, January of 2018, the state got approval from CMS to stand up the family supports waiver and the community supports waiver. At that time, the family supports waiver had a monetary cap of about $12,500, and community supports was about $25,000. And as DDA was being able to bring more individuals into services, while also being able to make certain that the more expensive waiver program, Community Pathways, would be readily available for those individuals who need residential services. Quickly, DDA learned that those caps were a bit too low. And so I think there was some community engagement. Rhonda, keep me, because I was in Medicaid, I only know because I was dealing with the authority side of it. But there was a bit of community engagement there to build in the flexibilities. And so the decision, a policy decision was made to remove those caps. But I don't think that there was much analysis around fiscal impact. And so we've been growing pretty steadily and pretty aggressively with the removal of those caps.
I think that those waivers were meant to keep us from getting where we are to go with the budget situation. And so the thought is that it's almost inevitable that we would have to have that discussion with the budget to move the budget smoothly. And so the thought was that the committee would be a part of that, and we make recommendations rather than actually out of that.
Yeah. So I know it's a big week in committees and Senate and House.
Right, and this is more long term than this budget, but just thinking about the growth of services. I think also part of the impetus for the development of the cap waivers is that the state was, correct me if I'm wrong, Marley, but potentially getting a little hot water maybe with Medicaid, because the way that the community pathways waiver was operated was a little inconsistent with the idea of when you're in a waiver you can get what you need, where you had to go through the crisis the critical needs recommendation process to get a different service. So if you were in day services, you have to do a critical needs recommendation and meet crisis resolution status to get into residential services. But the way the waiver is written is if you're in the waiver, you shouldn't have to go through that process. And so they were applying that criteria for all the services when it should have been more of an open mechanism of services based on the PCP development and needs recommendation. So that is also part of the reason for the growth. So having the capitated waivers allow people to come into that transition youth, but immediately have access to full, residential services if they weren't in need of those services. Or as it sort of became more nice to have that people could have those as opposed to based on criteria of determining really triaging amongst people.
I guess I would just add, just from my perspective about the waiver programs, when Deputy Secretary Simons joined the DDA, he also brought to Maryland the communities of practice of supporting families. And so he really wanted to support families. And so what we did at that time was we actually created groups similar to the waiver advisory group. We actually formed a group that was family members, parents, grandparents, siblings, and our Director of Family Supports, Marianne King-Bresci, was part of that, where we went around and said, what kind of supports do people need? What would be helpful for families? And so the waiver programs were created as part of that Deputy Secretary's commitment to supporting families. The waiver programs do have, for each services, if there's specific criteria or standards to get in. So it may have been previously that they were looking at, are people in crisis to access those residential services. But once you're in a Medicaid waiver program, you can access the different services based on assessed need. And so that's what's been kind of put in the waiver program over time. Please note that, remember Marlena was sharing that these programs were developed and implemented in 2018. We've done several amendments and also renewals since that time to kind of really help to look at, from a person-centered practice and perspective, looking at the person holistically to address their needs based on the services and the criteria that's available in the 3 waiver programs.
If we go ahead one slide, these are some of the assumptions that we made when we talked about this. That might also help, is that DDA could use both strategies to manage costs. They could cap the number of people who get in. Or they could do a dollar cap, or they could do a service cap was the third one. So the waivers have those cost caps. They might have a space for more people when there's a cost cap, so more people might get access to service when there's a cost, and so there's more equity around everybody getting the opportunity for service. And we need to make sure that the cap is high enough so that people get the kind of the basic services that entry-level people. And so one of the things that I did is I went back and I looked at the new people to services since 2018. So I looked at 2018, 19, 20, 21. I am absolutely a geek. There is no question about it. I like to look at these numbers. And what I saw was a growing number of services that people were accessing. So they were accessing 1 or 2 services as they entered in the 2018-19, and then the number of services that people are accessing right away has grown over time. And so obviously with the number of services, also when I'm talking about new people coming into service, because that's how it's written in the online data portal, it's new to service. So waivers help, they just help to be able to create those caps. So
Karen, can I just pause for a second?
Yeah.
Kelly, you had your hand raised, Kelly Cooper.
Yes, good afternoon. I just have a question. Have you guys considered the cost saving of what it would be if you fix the erroneous way that you calculate individuals' budgets? And what I mean by that is, I don't know if you fixed it, but when they began implementing the DSA in order to determine each self-directed person's budget, they say you get X number of hours of care a week, and they multiply that by a bundled rate, and that's how they develop the budget. But then when you break it down and do your PCP plan and budget, they say you can only use the maximum reasonable and customary rate, which is $32.16, which is substantially lower than the bundled rate that they use to calculate the allocated budget. So then participants are being left with several $1,000s that they're not actually able to access and utilize.
That's not something the Waiver Advisory Committee has looked at all. I don't know if your question was for DDA or for the Recommendations Committee.
My question would just be whether or not the committee could put forth a recommendation that DDA do an analysis of whether or not that could help with cost saving if they review the way that they are determining the budgets.
I want to speak to how budget calculation versus actual expenditures and how that ties into cost containment, because our cost containment is based on actual expenditures, not the budgets.
That's right. Thank you for the question. Yes, our actual DDA budget is based on actual utilization and not the sum of the budgets within the PCP. For example, this year our appropriation is somewhere in the park of 2.7 billion. If our budget was based on actual PCP budgets, that request would be more like $5 billion. We are taking a look at the budget methodology internally. It's outside the scope of the Waiver Advisory Committee.
Thank you.
So I would just suggest so that we can keep the WAC within the scope, that if you have any other ideas around cost containment, that you send us an email so that we can take it under advisement.
I think just to clarify, Kelly, what I heard you say is that I thought I heard you say the recommendation was to consider the budget methodology, creating the budgets for people self-directing, because it's using a bundled rate, is the words that you use, to create that budget for people who are self-directing. Did I misunderstand that you were suggesting maybe looking at that budget methodology for creating the self-directed budget?
Yes, ma'am. Also, can I also point out that the people in the back of the room, like I'm sorry, I don't know your name, the man with the red plaid shirt and beyond, it's very difficult to hear you when you're talking. So will you just raise your voice just a tiny bit?
Yep, thank you.
Here's the microphone.
Thank you.
If you go to the next slide, these are just some visuals for folks that we're talking about. So, you know, the community pathways waiver, fewer people in it, community supports waiver that has limited service models in it that more people get into it. So just a visual for people. Next slide. Another kind of vision. This is the balance. You know, we're talking about how to recommend that we create balance. I certainly think this is the beginning of the dialogue. I think there's a lot of things that DDA can do that are outside of the scope of the Waiver Advisory Committee, like do we make the recommendation, or does DDA, once they have this cap then in place, then DDA has the ability to look at other cost containment but still person-centered ways of doing businesses. And I've experienced that in some other states, and I know we've got some support from NASDs, and Rhonda has a whole team of people around her from other states that are also come up with really incredibly creative ways to create this balance so that people have access to the services. Next. So this is actually the recommendation that we wanted to put forward, is that the Maryland DDA put a financial cap on the community supports waiver and the family supports waiver that is reasonable to access current services available. And again, this could be that you say any new transitioning youth come in, they either have to be in some sort of crisis situation to access more services, but they have access to a meaningful day service that's what the transitioning youth money is for. And then the second one, and this was really important to people on the committee, that if a person's needs who are in either the community or the family supports waiver, once it's capitated, if they need the level of service in community pathways, that there is a proven piloted method for people to move from one waiver to another because they expressed concerns that that transition has been difficult for people. So that these two recommendations come together, that we have if we're going to do caps on the two waivers, that if people need the third waiver, that there be an easy methodology or well-defined qualifications for how they get into the pathways waiver.
Just an update, we had 3 additional members join, so we calculated that, so we do have a quorum at this time for that. Discussions? Committee members about the recommendation from the waiver recommendation work group? Rachel?
Thank you. I'm going to try and yell. I'm sorry, Matt, for sitting next to me while I'm yelling so everyone else can hear me. I am part of the group. I have opinions about this. I am really wondering now, given kind of where we are in the budget process and those discussions happening, and clearly there are lots of people way higher than us involved at this point, given that if it makes more sense to have more people involved in this conversation before we take a vote. I'm just trying to figure out where we fall in this process now that there are lots of people with more authority than us involved in this. Like, is it something we should be allowed, having public comment on before we take a vote? I'm just trying to make all of that make sense in my head, given how many conversations we've been having about the budget and all of those things.
Well, I mean, what I will say is this: I don't want this group's work done in vain. I also understand exactly what you're saying, but the governor's office is very much aware of the subcommittee and that we are expecting recommendations from the subcommittee. So I think we could continue with voting on the recommendation with the understanding that we're going to have to revisit the conversation as we continue to work with stakeholders. So after we do the vote, and again, I would like everybody to understand these are going to be ongoing conversations. And we definitely want you at the table with us to talk through these recommendations. After that, I too have something that I've been thinking about, but I don't want to influence the process in any way. And so very thankful for the subcommittee putting in all of this work and time and these considerations. They're very, very helpful. But after the vote, I would like to share what I've been thinking in regard to how our waiver authorities could move forward, considering cost containment, sustainability, system complexity, and so forth.
The other thing I was thinking about with this is that, as I said before, there's many ways to cap, that we would like to be at the table to discuss. If we agree on a cap, we don't want it to be, that's done, now let's go away. We want to say, tell us your ideas about strategies for capping. Are you thinking of would you consider a dollar amount? Would you consider a service amount? Would you consider the number of people? So we don't want to make the recommendation and then not be involved and continue dialogue. We want to make sure we continue to be involved.
I agree, and I think maybe softening the language a little bit in terms of putting a financial cap, more proposing a structure or something like that that the committee can then work off of and provide additional recommendations or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also think, Rachel, would sort of alleviate some of your concerns because it's more just like the beginning of a discussion rather than sort of go away and come back with a final product.
So Karen, so I'm hearing a couple things. I'm seeing this as the recommendation from the waiver work group. And then I'm hearing Matt maybe propose to alter it some, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with taking the word financial off. I mean, I think, Matt's in the group and we that's why I think a dialogue is so important, because this is what we put forward and now let's amend it. Let's change it to make what the committee wants.
Maybe instead of put, just the word explore, like
Okay.
explore financial cap or something like that.
Or explore caps, not even the word financial there. Could put caps, yeah.
Whether they be service or monetary.
Yeah.
So what I think I'm hearing is saying the recommendation is being edited to say the DDA to explore caps on the community supports and family supports waiver that is reasonable to access current services available in these two waiver programs.
Yeah, that's fine.
Anybody online, any council members online? Josh?
I just have a question. So how does the proposed DDA budget cuts play into this conversation, if it does at all?
That's the conversation we're having now. So the budget cuts, separate conversation from what this advisory subcommittee worked on. However, there will be more conversations with the greater group at large talking about all of those things as we look at the design of the waiver programs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Yes, Martin.
I kind of espouse the theory of Alexander the Great, who said, Estina lente, let us hasten slowly. And, I think I'm much more comfortable, and I would think a lot of people would be with Matt's suggestion about exploring, especially in a week when the Senate and the other committees are exploring the budget. And as Rachel said, there's a lot going on. There is a lot going on. It'd be good to know what the final figures are that the governor has in mind, because it deeply impacts everybody, thousands of people here. And I'm learning more as I sit here. I've learned the historicity of these waivers. This is very helpful. So, figure out, let's get the background information and then make a good decision on this one. This is an important decision here.
I also think it's important that we be at the table because not making the assumption that there's only the limited number of ways to cap a waiver that we know. There might be other ways that, our waiver experts know that they might bring to the table. So I think just to say it as explore gives us more ability to have further discussion about it.
Any other discussion from council members? John Paul.
I think that we are moving very fast, and maybe we should slow down and take this vote later, because I think that we need more information.
Just to clarify, and John Paul, thank you for sharing that. The recommendation that's on the screen has been edited to be able to say, as opposed to the recommending us putting a recommendation to the DDA to consider putting a financial cap, the recommendation from the subgroup now will be for the DDA to consider exploring caps. So it's exploring versus putting a cap on it.
That sounds better, than the original language.
Okay. Other council members? Okay, so I think we want to we'll put the first recommendation to a vote to the council members. And the recommendation is for the DDA to explore caps on the community supports and family supports waiver.
So I think they actually have to go together. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we were suggesting they go together, because we don't want one if we don't have two. So it's like a one vote.
Okay.
Both.
So the recommendations, just so that we're all on the same page, recommendation is for the DDA. The recommendation from the waiver recommendation work group is for the DDA to explore financial caps on the community supports waiver and family supports waiver that is reasonable to access current services available in these two waivers, and to create a smooth and piloted pathway for people to move from the community and family supports waiver into the community pathways waiver when their needs change.
I think we had talked about not having the word financial in there to explore whether we wanted that to be.
Explore cap.
Yeah, just to explore caps. So not tie it to a specific dollar amount. Maybe we're looking at services or dollar amounts, but yeah.
Okay, I'll do it again.
Sorry.
Recommendation is for the DDA to explore caps on the family and community supports waiver that would be reasonable to access current services available in these two waivers, and to create a smooth and piloted pathway for people to move from the community and family supports waiver into the community pathways waiver when their needs change. So that is the recommendations before the council. Does anybody want to make a motion?
Second.
I motion to approve.
And because it came from a committee, it does not need a second.
Gotcha. Okay, all those in favor, if you could raise your hands, and we'll get them on. We have all except for Mr. Martin, who's not voting. Those online, we got. Nicole, are you able to grab those online?
You want me to capture each name?
Yes, that would be great, just so we have it recorded.
Okay.
Thank you. In the room, we had Rob, Rachel, Matt, and Karen. Okay, those opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay.
I'd say at the moment I would oppose it, the way it's couched.
Two that opposed.
We can edit it though. You can.
Azib, your hand is raised. Can you just clarify?
Oh, no, I agree. That's all. That's all.
Oh, you agree? Okay, got you.
Okay.
All right, so based on what I'm seeing, the majority is in agreement with the recommendation as altered or edited for the DDA to explore caps on the waiver programs and to create a smooth and piloted pathway for people to move forward if they need to the community pathways waiver. Marlena, did you want to?
Yeah, so I just want to thank the subcommittee again for all of the work, and then thank everybody here today for weighing in. As Karen mentioned, this isn't something that she had conversation or the subcommittee had a conversation with me about. And so I too have been thinking about a path forward for the sustainability of our programs while making certain that individuals who need our services and supports are supported safely and in a manner that we can provide resources to more people. So when I started with DDA last year, I was meeting with a number of stakeholders who talked about or talked from their perspective in regard to what our service delivery system was at that time last year. And one of the things that was a common theme for me was complexity, right? And so we talked about how working with the community and trying to create the flexibilities to the extent at which each of these programs do, that we ultimately put ourselves into a place where there is a huge unintended consequence called flexibility. So I've been thinking about consolidating all three of these waiver programs into one program. And as we work together on looking at where there may be opportunities to put some service caps in more so than financial caps, I think it's just a way for us to continue to develop on those practices that the former administration brought about before COVID, right? And then COVID came and kind of put everything into a weird place based on the communities of practice. I also am very concerned about having a number of programs, and when a person's needs change, having to go through the eligibility process, those waiver applications, the time it takes to get moved into another waiver program, and those things happen outside of DDA's purview. We have a strong partnership with Medicaid, but I certainly can't dictate the timelines on that. And so what we find is we're challenged with individuals who have greater needs or changed needs, having to move between the waiver programs at any given time. So not that these recommendations are not important. I think they really are really good ideas to talk about. But I am interested also hearing from the group and not expecting a full analysis today, your thoughts about consolidation to address complexity, to address greater participant experience as a whole, and how we build in either policies or service definitions that speak to some of the cost controls or levers that we need in place. There are many states that operate DD programs, and it's one program. It's one comprehensive program, and though they're not easy, they don't present the number of flexibilities that we manage right now with the three different programs. So just wanted to share that with the greater group. As Rachel mentioned earlier, there are others that we want to also include in this conversation, but again, not expecting a full analysis right now, but definitely want everybody to think about that, a consolidated waiver program that would meet the needs and also be able to extend opportunities for individuals who have been waiting many, many years to come into services. Matt?
Yeah, that was actually our first recommendation. I think we got, that's the discussion we were having. So we're really on board. I think that's the discussion about moving between waivers and the complication. A lot of people mentioned that. So we really agree with that. I think it was only when the sort of the budget piece came into play in the past couple of weeks that we started to think we were worried about DDA getting there first without us having to sit at the table to talk about cost containment. So I think we'd be totally open to discussions about cost containment within a single waiver to eliminate complexity and strategies you have around that. Because that really that was a big part of the discussion.
Right.
We
spent 3 weeks on that one.
Yeah.
And then the budget came out, and then we flipped. So if you can get to where we're trying to go with one waiver, but we didn't go to that school. So if you have, if there's a way that you could do it and you could do some education with us about that, that would be really helpful because, as Matt said earlier, our understanding is that how many people go into the waiver is kind of an appropriation, but once you're in the waiver, it's an entitlement. So how do you create that cost containment when the waiver itself is an entitlement?
Yeah. So that's when we look at trends. We look at the data, right? That's when we look at the data. We make certain that we're meeting needs. And we can certainly bring our national experts in who have helped other states move to a consolidated waiver. I'm talking based on my experience working with single waivers, and also talking with my peers on a national level who actually operate one comprehensive DD waiver. Most importantly, it's about the participants' experience and making certain that their health and welfare needs are met as we all share that same common goal, while also making certain that the providers and individuals who provide the services have the supports they need. When you have a system that's just so complex, right? How do you really get to quality if there are so many distractions around, did we check this box? Did we do this? Did we do that? And so the service definitions, policies drive that path forward.
So that is a really long-term big, this is not a 3-month solution. So is there a balance between meeting the current needs while we work on developing those longer-term alternatives?
I think the balance starts here, the conversations. I mean, just as you all recommended, so maybe we look at, would that look in a comprehensive waiver, right? Mm-hmm. It might be the service definition itself instead of a financial cap. We would just need to really look at where we could create a balance there. Mm-hmm. And definitely need more people at the table to help think through all of the things, because even though I'm from Medicaid, I don't know everything. So definitely would need more folks at the table thinking through impacts, unintended consequences, but really it's to build that support around the individual in a sustainable way.
Just a reminder, with any waiver amendment, a new waiver or renewal, there's always a 30-day public comment period too, which is another great opportunity for us all to collectively hear from other stakeholders about ideals and proposals that would be put forward.
Could we, I don't want to spend a lot of time as a subcommittee going down a road that is not consistent with DDA and where you're thinking of. And so I would ask for some more education time with you around how you do some of these caps within a comprehensive waiver, because I would just love to learn more about that so that we have the background to advise you well.
Sure.
Any other discussion? Yeah. Teresa first, then Aziz.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So, Marlena, I really appreciate your vision that you've outlined. And as noted, yes, the subcommittee did talk about this at length. So it's great to hear that we're thinking alike. The participants' experience is always foremost important and is what's primary concern and as our focus. But as a secondary benefit with a single waiver approach is also at the provider level, that being particularly as a CCS and working with our community support, our CCS staff and the complexities of the current program. And if it was more streamlined, I think it would have great benefits to staff retention and many other things. So just want to share those thoughts.
Thank you. Aziz?
Okay, mine will be like right now the three are divided, like the family support is focused on children and young adults. The community support is for people who don't need 24/7. In the community pathway waiver, it covers, it's huge. So how are we going to guide people through this? Because the current system with the person-centered planning, it's flexibility in selecting services. It's flexible. So how are we going to customize for each individual when they are in one pool? Right now, even guiding the families through the family support, the family support, it has its own rules. So each person goes in that lane and they will ask for those things that their child needs if it's a young child. So if we put them all in one pool and one big long wait times, right now family support doesn't have that big long wait time, but the community pathway has a long wait time. So how are we going to marry all of those things?
Yeah, well, I would say a couple things. The person-centered planning process is important, and based on that planning process and people's assessed needs, they would be looking at the services. So in our waiver programs, the services requirements and descriptions are the same across the different programs. The family supports waiver includes all our what we call support services, assistive technology, environmental mods, personal supports. That same set of services are available in the community supports waiver. Plus, we've added the meaningful day services. So our employment services, our community development services, and other meaningful day. And those same set of meaningful day and support services are in our community pathways waiver. Plus, we added our residential services. So if there was a consolidation, really the same services would be available to all people. And the differences between the waiver programs right now is really the eligibility getting in the front door. So for family supports, you have to be under 21. For community supports, right now the eligibility is 18 and older without a need for residential. And the community supports is for adults older with residential needs. So it wouldn't bottleneck and have to worry from that because basically we would be using person-centered planning processes and looking at people's assessed needs. Teresa and Aziz, you have your hands still up. Did you have other comments?
My other thing is, how about like transitioning from one for people who are already in it, transitioning from family support to the bigger section. So how do they transition? Would there be any disruption of service?
Yeah, that's a great question. Marlena?
You go and then I'll follow up.
Yeah, no, because basically what we would do with CMS's approval for that to consolidate the programs, we would just then update the person's program within the system. So there would be no disruption to services. They would just, instead of being shown as the family supports waiver, they would be shown as enrolled in the community support or the community pathways waiver. And we would just, in the system, update their plans for the program name to reflect community pathways and open that opportunity up for assessed needs.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So we would make this process seamless for families, participants, and the providers. I'm including the case managers. That program work would happen on the department's end just to make certain that that individual's plan as well as special program code, and I hate to talk in technical terms, within our data systems accurately reflect that the individual is still in the waiver program. Their services and supports would not change. So what they were getting at the time that we consolidated the waiver based on their assessed needs would remain the same.
You keep saying assessed needs. We don't have an assessment tool right now. We use the plan as the driver rather than an assessment. Are you proposing adding an assessment?
So when I talk about assessed needs, in my mind, the waiver talks about like standards or criteria to get into different services, right? Homeless, transitioning from foster care. You have a behavior support plan that documents a need. So, it's more specific related to that. Those are things that we would consider an assessed need that we've got outlined already in the waiver program. We do currently have the health risk screening tool. We also utilize the support intensity scale, but there are also other tools nationally that are used that could be explored that the committee could look at. We could also consider and explore. Another hand raised. Azib, your hand's still up. Just checking to see if you had any other before we move on to public comment because we've been run over time.
Oh, sorry, it's a mistake. I'm so sorry.
Okay, great. I know we're at 2:30, but I'd like to open it up for some time for public comment. So if you're would like to participate in the public comment, if you could raise your hand and then we'll call it. Just a reminder that we want to provide opportunities for people, and we will have a 2-minute time clock, and to ensure confidentiality. Please, if you have person-specific questions, please reach out to us directly and we can help you with that. So I think the first person we have is Paulette. Paulette, go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I just want to put my comment in regards to the last conversation, especially is in regards to the single waiver. I thoroughly think that would be a very excellent approach. I think that it would increase flexibility, stop some of the duplication that we may be experiencing and confusion, and it will provide a seamless way for individuals to be covered by DDA throughout their lifespan, and it would be continuous. So I wanted to put that comment in. And then my second and last comment is, Rhonda, there really does need to be a definition developed for what is the assessed need, because what you just explained a few minutes ago, I did not realize was a way to express the assessed need versus being able to, through the plan, to define that person-centered needs for that individual based on their disability and challenges experienced because of that disability. So I've been requesting for a while that there really needs to be a definition for assessed need. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Paulette. Adam?
Hi, thank you all very much for hosting this forum and the ability to get an understanding of some of the things going on with the waiver. I'm a secondary transition specialist for a LEA in Maryland, and I would like to see more training for public school systems, special education departments, and people like myself, transition coordinators, and what we can do to assist in the waiver process a little bit better for our transitioning youth in their last 4-5 years, what we can do to prep. I think there's a lot of overlap, and I think if we're talking about lowering costs and the issues with budgeting, I think some things that are done by CCSs or eligibility determination, if we can partner up with LEAs and help ease the burden on any DDA staff or CCS. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. And for the group, do you want to share what LEA refers to?
Yeah, I'm with Calvert County Public Schools in Southern Maryland region. And
LEA, is that the local education agency? What does LEA stand for?
I'm sorry, the jargon of education. Yeah, local education agency, just the county I work in, the board.
Great, thank you so much. Paulette, I see your hand still raised.
Sorry.
All good, all good. Any other comments? Well, on behalf of Charlotte and myself, we really appreciate your time today. What great discussion and input from the public too. We wish you a great weekend and look forward to further meeting with you. Take care, everybody.